Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. In today's video, I will be reacting to what DNA ancestry tests can and can't tell you from VOX. This video, I'm really hoping will go into a lot of the nitty-gritty information about DNA testing, being that it's from VOX, the big company that does high quality videos. Hopefully they'll have done a lot of research into this, and hopefully they'll actually give a lot of good information for people who are interested in doing DNA tests. The one thing I do worry about this, which is not uncommon with some of these pieces from these type of media companies, is sometimes it'll be a little bit of a fear-mongering piece where they'll lean a little too much, in my personal opinion, into the negatives and kind of playing up the slippery slope of what might be in the future. And, not to say that anyone can really tell what the future holds, but sometimes these videos just are a little too gimmicky in how they come across and just being fear-mongering videos. But we'll have to just watch and see. But before we jump into the video, please be sure to subscribe. I'm trying to get up to 10,000 subscribers. And right now, while I'm shooting this video, I'm just under 9,000. So hopefully I'll be a lot closer by the time this goes up. But if you aren't subscribed, please do so. And also be sure to go to my merchandise store. It just went up. I'm wearing one of my shirts right now, my Gotta Find 'Em All shirt. And there's a couple other designs as well. Look down below in the description to get a link to the store. But with that all said, let's go ahead and jump right into the video.
So I recently took one of those at-home DNA ancestry tests. All I had to do was fill up a vial with a disgusting amount of spit and mail it off for analysis. We're going to be here for a very long time. That percentage, 86.7, I understood that to be the portion of my DNA that's West Asian. But it turns out that's not exactly what ancestry tests are telling us at all.
All right, let's see what he's got to say.
This is an ad for one DNA ancestry test, 23andMe. An ethnically ambiguous woman travels the world and a circle animates around her, sort of like the pie chart in my test results, as if to say, this woman's DNA is 29% East Asian. And here's an ad for a different ancestry test.
52% of my DNA comes from Scotland and Ireland.
And somehow this information compels him to wear a kilt?
Personally, I hate these commercials that a lot of the Ancestry and 23andMe have. They play up the sides of the DNA test that most genealogists are like, no, don't pay so much attention to that. And like that one commercial with this guy where he's like, I thought I was German, but then it turns out that I'm Scottish. And it's like, well, actually, it's a little bit more complicated than just that. So I hope that's what they're going to talk about right now.
All right, so what are ancestry tests really telling us? Can you help me understand what my results are telling me? Because I'm getting mixed messages from ads and how other people talk about their results. This is Wendy Roth.
I'm an associate professor of sociology at the University of British Columbia. Okay, first of all, these test results are not about your entire DNA. They're about a tiny, tiny fraction of your DNA.
To understand how genetic ancestry tests work, let's start with the DNA itself. There are about 3 billion base pairs in our genetic code. Those are the A's, C's, T's, and G's that form the instructions that make us, us.
Okay, I just want to point out for any genealogy fans on YouTube, I don't know when, this video came out April 16, 2019, and I'm not sure who came out with it first, but I believe that they're using the Lego tricks that family history fanatics used in their own video about how recombination works, which is an absolutely amazing video in terms of how recombination works and using a visual to understand it. And they use Mega Blocks, I think. And so I'm pretty sure that's kind of an old video of theirs. I feel like that came out 2018, 2017, because I believe that was already out when I started my channel in 2017. So I wonder if they watched their video and decided, oh, this would be perfect to use. So I doubt they're going to shout that out here, but shout out to Family History Fanatics. And if you haven't seen that video and you don't understand recombination, go find that video and check it out.
Of these 3 billion base pairs, 99.9% are exactly the same in all humans. But for the remaining 0.1%, one person might have an adenine where another person has a guanine. These single letter differences are called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. What many DNA tests are looking at are a relatively small number of SNPs, specific positions in this 0.1% in our DNA, in order to give you your results. When a testing company receives your sample, they compare your pattern of SNPs to different reference populations in their database. These reference populations contain SNPs known to exist more frequently in different modern populations in the world. Then the testing company will give you a percentage that represents how strongly your pattern of SNPs resembles that group. But this process has a bunch of important limitations, and this is where things get complicated.
Lots of markers are found in multiple populations around the world.
First, even trying to classify humans into groups in the first place is tricky. Human genetic diversity isn't organized neatly into groups like countries or continents. Take a look at the distribution of this SNP that affects how a person absorbs folic acid. It's commonly found in Mexico, but also in Chile or even China just as often.
So let's say that a particular marker is found in the South Asian population 30% of the time. There's still a possibility that when you inherited this marker, you got it not from somebody who was South Asian, but from somebody who was in some completely different group that also happened to have that marker.
Second, testing companies put together their reference populations based on academic research and other people that have taken genetic ancestry tests. And most testing companies aren't clear about how many people are represented in their reference populations. So each company might have different reference databases, which helps explain why you might get different results from different companies. So what does this all mean for my results?
This is a probability with a margin of error. So it's not that you overall are 85% West Asian, but that the particular spots that they happen to look at, 85% of those locations are associated with Western Asia in their reference population.
So what about these other results? Am I really 2% African?
You've got a lot of, sort of small trace percentages here.
Yep.
Percentages that small are really not meaningful. Again, because that could be affected by having one person in the database. And if that one person gets reclassified later on because they get, a larger sample, that percentage will disappear.
Buried in my results, I found this confidence slider. It turns out my results were presented at
23andMe is the only one that has the confidence slider, and I really enjoy this confidence slider. It makes me wish that there were confidence sliders for your actual genetic matches, which would really be you would change the minimum of centimorgan length on how you're measuring your genetic matches. But yeah, this is actually a really interesting thing to play around with if you're on 23andMe. Or you have a relative who's tested there and you have access to their kit, you can go and check that out and play around with it. And it's actually really interesting because not only are they going to show you the difference in how they're measuring it, but instead of just showing you the map of where your DNA is coming from in just, you have a pair of each chromosome, instead of like most companies where the pair is represented by one bar, you can actually see it here on the window. Like they have both of the chromosome 1 and both of chromosome 2 and both of chromosome 3, which can actually be useful if you have a very specific ancestry showing up on one bar. With that said, when they show you this, it's not going to be like, on the first chromosome, the top one's paternal, bottom one's maternal. Then the next one, top one's paternal, bottom one's maternal. It's not like that. They can't actually tell which one's maternal and which one's paternal. But depending, you can figure it out. So like if you have a Jewish grandmother, then wherever you're finding the, bars of Jewish ancestry in 23andMe, then that means that those are coming from whichever side that grandmother's from. So if it's your maternal grandmother, then you know that that bar with the Jewish ancestry is likely representing your mother's side. So Yeah, just a lot of interesting asides.
At about 50% confidence by default. When I increase that to 90%,
we're
my
gonna go back
confidence
just a
by
little bit.
default. When I increase that to 90%, my
little
result
bit
isn't
further.
made very clear in the results. Buried in my results, I found this confidence slider. It turns out my results were presented at about 50% confidence by default. When I increased that to 90%, my results got much more vague. All of a sudden,
Yep.
I was broadly West Asian, and a lot of my genetic markers were unassigned. But so what if people misinterpret their results? Well, that has consequences. They can make us believe that our ethnicities have these bright line distinctions between them, like in a pie chart.
When people are presented with test results and these percentage breakdowns, and they're led to think that these tests can tell you your race, or they can tell you who you are, that leads to a way of thinking. It makes us feel that there are very stark and clear biological differences between races.
One study found that DNA ancestry tests reinvigorate age-old beliefs in essential racial differences, that our socially constructed racial categories like white or black are essentially different from each other. Some groups have even turned to genetic ancestry tests to try and prove their racial purity. DNA ancestry tests can be useful. Search YouTube and you'll find hundreds of stories of people using them to find lost relatives and to fill in their family histories.
I just found my biological dad's family.
And to people who don't know a lot about their ancestry, the tests offer the best available estimate.
So I really don't know that much about my genetic history.
But it's important to remember that despite their marketing, these tests are just a company's best guess at matching your genetic markers to
just
different
a
parts
guess.
of the world. What they're not going to tell you is whether you should wear a kilt or not.
Yeah, that's just being wacky if you're going to do
DNA
that.
ancestry tests might not be as informative as you want them to be, but more and more people are still taking them. And this giant database of genetic information is becoming super valuable to an unexpected group, law enforcement.
Yeah.
We teamed up with Verge Science to look into how your privacy is at risk because of these DNA ancestry tests, even if you've never taken one.
Ooh, I'm going to have to watch that video. All right, well, that was a pretty good video overall. I think they did stick a lot on the admixtures, which, you know, that is a big part of the test because that's the major part that these companies advertise. The thing I'm a little disappointed about, which I was kind of hoping they'd go into, is that's just one part of these tests. And while you do have the health part of the test, which can be beneficial, I think the most beneficial part are the genetic matches and what you can gain out of that. And technically they kind of touched on that in saying that, you know, it does help people out who are trying to find family, and it does help people who don't really know about their ancestry. But at the same time, I feel like they maybe could have talked a little bit more about, you know, that you can actually use this to do all sorts of things for your family, you know, not just for, you know, those little quick things that they mention. So, you know, overall pretty good, but there were definitely some things I think they could have touched on. I'm very interested to see this other video they're talking about. From the title of it, it sounds like that one's going to be a bit more on the fear-mongering side. This is from back in 2019, so a year ago. And, you know, back then that was what, you know, forensic genetic genealogy, the, you know, criminal stuff had just been started, like it had just been going for maybe months. I think the first case solved, the Golden Gate Killer, I think that was 2018, end of 2018. So I'll have to see what they have to say. I'm a little worried that it's going to be a bit more on the fear mongering side, but I will say that, you know, for this video, they covered the fact that, you know, when you're looking at these percentages, it's just an estimate. That it's a reference to a population. So it's not saying that you are whatever this ancestry is. It's just saying that the population group that they've defined as that, you're matching a lot of the genetic, you know, the SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphisms that they're finding in those groups. So, you know, you will, if anyone's done a DNA test and they've had it for over a year and kept up with it, they've very likely seen the update or an update go through. I'm pretty sure Ancestry's done like 2 or 3 in the past year, maybe. I know they've been updating all sorts of stuff, but pretty much all of these companies have been doing a lot of updates, and a lot of these companies are actively seeking out and helping in building more studies and doing more scientific research so that they can have better results. But one thing I do think that the video touched on as well that really is a good point about one of the reasons why people misread these tests all the time is because of the advertising that a lot of these companies use for the testing. A lot of the times you have them playing up the gimmicky part of, oh, well, you find out that you're this percentage this and it's going to change your life. And while that can be the case, they make it seem, you know, the guy where he thought he's German, all of a sudden he has Scottish ancestry. Well, technically, if he was going to get that reading, it was probably going to be a mixture of like Scottish, British Isles, and there probably was going to be a French-German mixture in there. And that's not uncommon because there were a lot of different migrations between France and Germany, and then the British Isles and Scotland. And so there, you know, there with all of those different mixtures, it's not super uncommon. So it's just kind of funny how they like really like play up like that side of it. So, you know, I doubt that the companies will change that. They might. You know, as a genealogist, we always hope that they're going to play up the fact that, you know, test and you can not only help, you know, yourself find your family and cousins and build your family tree, but you could potentially be helping other family build their trees and, you know, possible cousins or, you know, that may have been adopted. You testing, you may be the one person to help them figure out who their biological parents are. So there's a lot more that is going on with these tests than just the genetic admixtures, but you're probably not going to see much of that through these commercials. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Also, be sure to click right here to subscribe. It's completely free to do so, and it really does help me out as well. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. See you in my next video.